She's just a waitress, he laughed, and they all laughed with him. Even Daniel, even my husband. My face burned as every camera turned toward me like I was the night's entertainment. But the second betrayal came quietly, when Preston repeated it on live TV the next morning and used my name as a punchline. I wasn't just humiliated. I was erased, reduced, laughed off by the same man who built his empire off the backs of women like me. What he didn't know? I still had my apron and the ledger behind his legacy. Now that the world's watching me, I'm done hiding in his dining room. Let's see how he handles the heat. My name is Carmen Langford, and I'm 45 years old. Every morning, I wake up in a mansion that belongs to my husband Daniel's family, where the air is thick with citrus polish and old expectations. Preston, my father-in-law, runs the Langford restaurant empire like he runs this house, with iron rules about who belongs and who serves. 10 years of marriage to his only son hasn't changed his view of me as the help. My shoulders still tighten when silverware clinks at family dinners, each sound a reminder that I'm an outsider. But what Preston doesn't know is that those years I spent waitressing through night school taught me more than serving. I learned systems, payroll, and crisis management. The marble, floors may be cold, but the books are colder. Polished floors hide messy ledgers and messier loyalties. But let me start from the beginning. 3 weeks before Preston's 70th birthday gala, I stood in our bedroom watching Daniel fuss with his bow tie. The September heat pressed against our windows, but inside, the air conditioning kept everything crisp and controlled, just like Preston liked it. "Honey, about the seafood vendor," I started, smoothing my dress. Daniel caught my eye in the mirror. "What about them?" "Their last few deliveries have been off. Maybe we should look into—" "Carmen, please." He turned, that familiar tension creeping into his jaw. "Dad's got people for that. This is his night. Let's not make waves. You ever notice how some people say please like they're really saying shut up?" I nodded and went back to reviewing the run of show on my tablet. Guest arrival at 7. Press scheduled for 7:30. Dinner service at 8. Every detail precision-engineered for maximum impact. The Langford name demanded nothing less. The venue transformed over those next weeks. Crystal chandeliers appeared like stars, their light catching on fresh paint and polished brass. Press lists grew longer, donor names more prestigious. I watched it all from the shadows, my old service instincts humming beneath my skin. 10 years of marriage hadn't erased those rhythms, knowing when to move, when to pause, when to fade into the background. The night arrived thick with Atlanta heat. Ladies in designer gowns fanned themselves with program cards while waiters glided between them, champagne trays balanced just so. I remembered that dance, that careful choreography of service. My fingers twitched sometimes, muscle memory wanting to straighten a napkin or adjust a place setting. "Carmen, darling." Preston's voice carried across the room as he approached, wrapped in his favorite tuxedo and that particular smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Everything looks adequate." I smiled back, all practiced charm. "Thank you, Preston." He patted my arm like you might pat a child's head. "Just stay visible, but not too visible, The cameras love Daniel, and we wouldn't want to distract from the family narrative. Family narrative. Right. Because nothing says family values like treating your daughter-in-law like an inconvenient prop. The evening rolled forward on waves of champagne and carefully curated nostalgia. Preston worked the room like the conductor of a very expensive orchestra, each conversation perfectly timed to highlight the Langford legacy of traditional Southern hospitality. Every mention of their charitable works earned appreciative murmurs from the assembled guests. At 8:45, Preston tapped his crystal glass for attention. The room hushed, all eyes drawn to his commanding figure at the head table. He scanned the crowd slowly, his gaze lingering on my face for just a moment too long. My spine stiffened. I knew that look. It was the same one he wore before dropping some casual cruelty at Sunday dinner. "Friends, family, distinguished guests. He began, his drawl thick as honey. Tonight we celebrate not just a birthday, but a legacy. The Langford name has meant something in Atlanta for generations. The crowd nodded, perfectly trained. We've built more than restaurants. We've built community, traditional values, family. He paused, and I felt the trap about to spring. Though sometimes family comes from unexpected places. My fingers tightened around my champagne stem. Take my dear daughter-in-law here. He gestured toward me, and dozens of heads turned. Some might say she married up, but I say she's just... Another pause, perfectly timed. Well, she's just a waitress, y'all. Laughter rippled through the crowd like ice water down my spine. I held my smile in place as cameras flashed, capturing what I'm sure Preston thought was a charming family moment. Daniel chuckled beside me, his hand squeezing my shoulder in, what he probably thought was comfort. Before I could process the humiliation fully, a young server appeared at my elbow, panic clear in his eyes despite his professional demeanor. "Mrs. Langford," he whispered urgently. "There's a situation in the kitchen, the seafood station. Something's not right." I glanced toward the kitchen doors, already seeing the slight chaos brewing behind them. Years of experience told me exactly what that particular kind of rushed movement meant. We were minutes away from a full-scale service crisis. My cheeks still burned from Preston's joke, but I straightened my shoulders. Maybe I was just a waitress to them, but right now, that might be exactly what this party needed. I pushed through those kitchen doors like I was stepping back in time. The familiar chaos hit me first, that mix of steam and panic and too many bodies moving too fast. The head chef was red-faced, barking orders while kitchen staff scrambled around spoiled shrimp platters. The smell hit me next, that telltale whiff that meant trouble. You know that moment when muscle memory kicks in? When your body remembers exactly what to do before your brain catches up? That's what happened to me right then. "Stop!" My voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone freeze." They did. Maybe it was the authority in my tone, or maybe they just needed someone to take charge. Either way, 15 faces turned to me. "First things first, those shrimp trays, get them on ice and isolated, now." 2 line cooks jumped to it. "Chef Marcus, what's our backup protein situation?" The head chef wiped his brow. "We've got the tenderloin prep for tomorrow's corporate lunch." "Perfect. How many portions?" 200. I nodded, already running calculations. "Slice them thin, quick sear, will do." "Steak bites with that remoulade sauce you prepped for the shrimp. Same presentation, different protein." I turned to the sous chef. "Temperature check on all remaining seafood stations. I want readings from every tray, every cooler." The kitchen snapped to attention. It felt good, I'll admit, like slipping on a comfortable pair of shoes you'd forgotten you owned. My hands moved with practiced efficiency as I helped plate the first few samples, showing them exactly how I wanted the presentation. "Floor captains," I called out. 3 servers stepped forward. "Here's your story. Chef's signature steak bites, a special addition to tonight's menu. Say it back to me." They repeated it in unison. "Perfect." "Mrs. Langford," one of them whispered, pointing behind me. I turned to see a local news crew had slipped into the kitchen, their camera drinking in every detail of our controlled chaos. I ignored them. "Time check?" 8:57, someone called out. "We need trays moving in 3 minutes. Can we do it?" The kitchen responded with a chorus of, "Yes, chef," that brought a smile to my face. Old habits die hard, I guess. We hit our mark exactly. I watched from the kitchen door as the first wave of servers glided out, perfectly timed, perfectly presented. The ballroom hummed with appreciation as guests tasted the steak bites. Preston was holding court at the head table, somehow managing to look both surprised and completely in control. My hands were shaking as I stepped back into the shadows. I grabbed a linen napkin, twisting it between my fingers where no one could see. The news crew was still filming, but their camera wasn't pointed at me anymore. It was focused on Preston as he rose to accept congratulations from his guests. I should have known better than to hope for recognition. Should have known what was coming next. The morning shows were already running clips of the party when I woke up. Preston had accepted their invitation to appear live, looking fresh and polished in his signature navy suit. The host was practically fawning over him. "What an amazing evening," she gushed. "And I hear there was some excitement in the kitchen?" Preston's laugh was perfectly practiced. "Oh, that little hiccup. Well, you know what they say. A good waitress always knows when the shrimp stinks." The studio audience laughed. The host laughed. Preston beamed at the camera. And there it was. My moment of competence, my proof that I was more than they thought, reduced to another punchline at my expense. The segment ended with a freeze frame of my face from the night before, caught in mid-instruction in the kitchen. Below it, the caption read, "Preston, Langford celebrates 70 years of legacy leadership." I sat there in my quiet living room, the TV still humming, and felt something shift inside me. Something final. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Every notification felt like another little needle under my skin. Friends from high school, college study groups, even my old restaurant crew. They were all sending support. But you know how support can sound a lot like pity when it comes wrapped in those little crying emojis? Daniel found me at the breakfast table, scrolling through yet another group chat. "Babe, you've got to let this go. It's just internet stuff. It'll blow over." I looked up at him, really looked at him. He was adjusting his tie in that precise way he always did, getting ready for another day at Daddy's company. "Just internet stuff? You know how these things work. Next week it'll be something else, some cat video or whatever." He kissed the top of my head, a gesture that suddenly felt patronizing. "I've got meetings all day. Don't let it get to you." The front door clicked shut behind him, and I sat there in that huge, empty kitchen, listening to the echo. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a different kind of message, a notification from one of those restaurant industry forums I'd been quietly following for years. Someone complaining about payroll at one of Preston's locations. You ever have one of those moments when something you've been looking at for years suddenly comes into focus? Like when you finally see the pattern in the wallpaper? I pulled out my old work notebook, the one I'd kept through years of serving tables and managing shifts, started flipping through the pages, past all my notes about tipped credit calculations and labor laws, things I'd studied during night school, thinking they'd help me move up in the industry. Family wages, Preston always called them in his TV spots. But I remembered what that really meant from my serving days. The careful dance of tip credits, the way certain numbers never quite added up. My phone lit up with another message, this one from Preston's PR team, copied to all family members. "Excellent damage control, maintaining positive optics, brand integrity, intact." The words blurred together, corporate speak that meant nothing and everything. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Location by location, I mapped out every restaurant in Preston's empire. Started noting patterns, things that didn't sit right. The way certain managers always seemed to quit right after raising concerns. How the books somehow balanced perfectly every quarter, despite wild swings in business. Then I found the email. It had been sitting in my archived folder for months, from Gloria Thompson, former head accountant at Preston's corporate office. She'd reached out after her early retirement last year, asking if I'd like to get coffee sometime. I remembered the rumors about how she'd left, something about questioning the books and finding herself suddenly obsolete. My hands were steady as I typed out my reply. Coffee would be wonderful. Tomorrow morning? She suggested a quiet place downtown, far from Preston's usual haunts. I spent the rest of the day printing schedules, employee handbooks, policy manuals. Every document told a story, but only if you knew how to read between the lines. That evening, I stood in front of Preston's corporate office, keycard in hand. As Daniel's wife, I had access. For emergencies, they'd said. The weight of my portable scanner in my bag felt like both a promise and a threat. The security guard nodded as I walked in. "Evening, Mrs. Langford. Working late? Just picking up some files for Daniel," I said, amazing myself with how steady my voice sounded. "You know how men are with their paperwork." He chuckled, waving me through. The sound of my heels on the marble floor echoed through the empty building as I made my way to the records room. Each step felt like a decision, each click a reminder of Preston's words, "Just a waitress." I flicked on the lights and pulled out my notebook. At the top of a fresh page, I wrote 2 words, "Prove it." The scanner hummed to life in my hands. Outside the windows, Atlanta's skyline sparkled like it was keeping secrets. Well, I knew something about keeping secrets too, and it was time to start spilling them. The next morning hit different. Know what I mean? Like when you're about to step off a diving board and your whole body's already feeling the fall before you move. Gloria's house sat back from the street, one of those old Atlanta places with a wraparound porch that had probably seen 50 years of morning coffees and evening gossip. As I walked up, the smell hit me. This mix of old papers and peppermint that somehow made perfect sense for an accountant's home. "You brought receipts," Gloria said, eyeing my briefcase as she opened the door. No hello, no small talk. I liked her already. "Come on back. I've got something you need to see." You know those moments when you realize you've stumbled into exactly the right place? Her dining room looked like mission control. Stacks of papers everywhere, all organized in some system I couldn't yet read. A banker's box sat in the middle of the table. Year-end variances, written in neat block letters on the side. The headlines aren't the story, Gloria said, pulling out files. Never are. You want to find the truth? Follow the hours. Her finger traced down a column of numbers. See here? Every shift they shave minutes. 5 here, 10 there. Multiply that across 50 locations. I leaned in, and suddenly those numbers started singing to me. All those years of running dinner service, tracking my server's time, it gave me a rhythm for reading between the lines. "They're making them clock out before prep," I said, seeing the pattern, "but still requiring the work." "Mm-hmm." Gloria pulled out another spreadsheet. "And look how they split the shifts. Keep everyone just under the benefits threshold, but the work still needs doing, so they pressure people to stay," I finished. My mind flashed to faces I knew, servers I'd trained who'd moved to Preston's restaurants thinking they were trading up. How many of their stories had I heard? I dug into my own files, started matching names to numbers. "It's not just one location," Gloria said, spreading out more papers. "Pattern travels up, all the way to Preston's office. Man signs every policy himself, proud of his hands-on management style." The way she said it made it sound like a curse. I thought about how many times I'd heard him brag about that on TV. "Legacy keeps us honest." That was his favorite line, right up there with family values and Southern tradition. "What's the move?" I asked, though I was already reaching for my phone, pulling up my calendar. "How do we make this stick?" Gloria slid a piece of paper across the table. Just a list of names and numbers, but I recognized the department header. "Labor Board," she said simply. "They've been waiting for something solid. Patterns like this, crossing state lines, they'll move." My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, forwarding something from Preston. A selfie from some charity lunch, all smiles and handshakes. The caption read, "Legacy keeps us honest." The exclamation point felt like a dare. I looked at my calendar, then at the stack of evidence we'd built. The complaint packet practically wrote itself. Dates, locations, patterns. Gloria watched as I attached the files, her face giving nothing away. When I hit send, the room got real quiet. Just the sound of ceiling fan blades cutting through air that suddenly felt thicker. "They won't see it coming," Gloria said, gathering up papers. "That's your advantage." I nodded, thinking about time, how it moves different when you're waiting for something to hit. But I didn't say that out loud. Some clocks you don't name until they're ready to strike. "More coffee?" Gloria asked, already heading to the kitchen. "We've got more files to go through." I followed her, breathing in that peppermint air. Outside, Atlanta humidity pressed against the windows like it was trying to get in on our secret. But in here? In here, we had air conditioning and ammunition, and I was just getting started. The Department of Labor's response landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning. You ever notice how life-changing news always comes wrapped in the most boring packaging? The email might as well have been about printer maintenance, all procedure and protocol, until you got to the part that mattered. Audit dates, locations, scope of review. I printed it out, hands steady, even though my heart was doing double time. The paper felt different somehow, like it carried actual weight. Funny how a few paragraphs of government letterhead can change everything. "They're moving fast," Gloria said when I called her. I could hear papers shuffling on her end. "Multiple sites, coordinated visits. They're taking this seriously." "Good thing we've got it mapped out," I replied, pulling up the route document we'd built. Gloria had color-coded everything: red for high-risk locations, yellow for pattern-confirming stops, green for the clean sites that would make the others look worse by comparison. That afternoon, I watched Preston's latest PR push roll out across social media. Family-first hiring at Southern Heritage restaurants, complete with carefully staged photos of smiling kitchen staff. The same staff who'd been sending me screenshots of their doctored time cards all week. Ever since word got out about my coffee meetings with Gloria, my inbox had turned into a confession booth. "Look at this," I'd tell Gloria, forwarding another batch of evidence. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore." "Pride before the fall," she'd reply. "Keep everything, double backups." I did more than that. Triple backups, encrypted files, offline copies. You don't spend years watching rich men cover their tracks without learning a few things about information security. I even had a media package ready, though I hoped I'd never need it. Sometimes the best insurance is the kind you never cash in. Daniel was getting harder to ignore. He'd taken to eating dinner in his study, doctor closed like some kind of shield. When we did cross paths, it was always the same. "Don't make this worse, Carmen, please." As if I was the one making anything worse. Sunday brunch was its own special kind of torture. Preston held court at the head of the table, talking about emotional responses and female sensitivity like I wasn't sitting right there. The old me would have stared at my plate, swallowed it down with mimosa. But I'd stopped drinking his champagne weeks ago. Back home, I stood in my kitchen, staring at the countdown sticky note on my fridge. 10 days. The number felt like a living thing, each digit loaded with possibility and threat. Below it, I wrote a single line: 10 days until audit. Just then, my phone buzzed with another time card screenshot. Third one today. The message that came with it read, "You were always one of us. Thank you." That's the thing about being just a waitress. You learn to read the room, to spot the difference between who people pretend to be and who they really are. Preston had spent years teaching Atlanta that he was some kind of patriarch, serving up Southern values alongside his overpriced comfort food. But I'd worked in restaurants long enough to know the real character of any establishment lives in its payroll, not its PR. I looked at my sticky note again. 10 days. In restaurant time, that's about 120 prep shifts, 720 hours of people clocking in and out, each minute accounted for or, in Preston's case, creatively misplaced. The evening shadows were stretching across my kitchen floor, turning everything soft and uncertain. But that number on my fridge? That was solid. 10 days until the Department of Labor walked through Preston's doors with their clipboards and their questions. 10 days until all those careful records Gloria and I had gathered would find their way into official hands. I touched the sticky note one more time, feeling the slight tackiness of the adhesive under my finger. In the distance, I could hear Daniel's study door closing again, the sound like a period at the end of a very long sentence. You know what's funny about expensive law offices? They all smell the same, like leather-bound, ambition and pine-scented authority. I watched Preston's town car idle outside while his lawyer, Marcus Bennett, gestured to the chair across from his desk. The kind of chair designed to make you feel small. I sat anyway. You don't survive 20 years in food service without learning how to plant yourself with dignity, even when they're trying to shrink you. Mrs. Langford, Bennett began, sliding a crisp envelope across his desk. Mr. Whitmore believes there's room for mutual understanding here. A consultative stipend, if you will, in the spirit of respect. Have you ever noticed how rich people never just call money money? It's always wrapped in prettier words, like serving hamburger on fine china doesn't make it filet mignon. The check inside had more zeros than I'd seen in my life. Next to it lay a confidentiality agreement thick enough to choke on. This arrangement, Bennett continued, would ensure peace for all parties involved. My hand hovered over the envelope. For a moment, just one, I remembered what it felt like to count quarters for bus fare, to calculate exactly how many double shifts it would take to cover next semester's textbooks. That kind of memory lives in your bones. But then other memories surfaced. Maria from the downtown location, working through her break because they'd shaved her clock in. Time. Old Jerome with his arthritic hands, never quite making the hours needed for health insurance, despite opening the kitchen 6 days a week. Tell Mr. Whitmore I appreciate the gesture, I said, standing up. But I don't think Jerome Thompson appreciates working 60 hours and getting paid for 38. Or Sandra Mills having her overtime vanish into training hours. The names felt good on my tongue, solid, real people who'd trusted me with their stories. Bennett's professional smile tightened. Consider carefully, Mrs. Langford. Family reputation is a delicate thing. Funny, I replied. I was just thinking the same thing. Outside, my phone buzzed with Gloria's text. Proud, but careful. She knew what this meeting was about. We'd planned for it. Preston's kind of man always tries to buy silence before they try anything else. The house felt colder that evening. Daniel was waiting in the kitchen, tie loosened, face hard with something between anger and fear. You're embarrassing us, he said, not even looking up from his whiskey. Dad's lawyer called. Your father's embarrassing himself, I answered. But Daniel was already walking away, shoulders rigid with that special tension reserved for men choosing legacy over truth. I spent the next hour backing up files, something Gloria had taught me early on. Paper, trails are like good recipes, she'd said. Always keep copies. Every spreadsheet, every screenshot, every time-stamped complaint went to secure drives far from Preston's reach. Changed passwords again, too, using that random generator Gloria swore by. The TV droned from Daniel's study. Preston was on the evening news again, talking about family values and corporate integrity, like he hadn't spent years building his fortune on stolen hours and vanishing over time. His voice carried that warm, paternal tone that had fooled Atlanta for so long. Around midnight, I set my kitchen timer for 4:30 a.m. 3 ex-managers had agreed to talk, but only in those gray hours before their current jobs started. People who'd seen the system from the inside, who could connect dots even Gloria's careful accounting couldn't quite reach. Sleep didn't come easy. Every car passing outside sounded like trouble, parking. Every house creak felt like footsteps. But here's the thing about choosing spine over safety. Once you start standing straight, it hurts more to bend. The timer's buzz cut through pre-dawn darkness like a knife through butter. My phone screen lit up with the first name, Marcus Rodriguez, former regional supervisor, now running his own food truck because he couldn't stomach the games anymore. I took a deep breath, touched the call button, and watched the first threads of sunrise start to paint my kitchen walls. Some mornings ask you who you really are. This one wasn't asking. It was telling. You know that moment when your whole world shifts, and it starts with something as simple as a forgotten window on a computer screen? That's how it happened, with a blinking cursor and file names that told stories I'd hoped to control the timing of. I'd been careless, rushing through printouts for Gloria before Daniel got home. Usually I was methodical about dismounting the encrypted drive, but this time I heard his car in the driveway and hurried. left it right there on his monitor, those damning folder names in neat little rows. Variants, sign-offs, tipped credit misuse, HQ roll-ups. Carmen! His voice cracked through the house like summer thunder. Carmen! Have you ever walked toward your own execution? That's what those steps to his study felt like, each one heavy with the weight of knowing exactly what you're about to face. Daniel stood at his desk, hands planted on either side of the keyboard, his face flushed the way it used to get when Preston criticized his quarterly reports. "What is this?" he demanded, jabbing a finger at the screen. "Are you spying on Dad's company?" "I'm documenting wage theft," I said, keeping my voice steady. The words felt different out loud, more real, more dangerous. Ask Maria Hernandez about her missing break times. Ask Jerome Thompson about his overtime that disappeared into thin air. Ask— Stop it! Daniel's fist came down hard on the desk. "These are our people you're attacking. Our family." "Your family," I corrected him. "And those workers? Their families too. Real ones, Daniel. Ones that can't make rent because your father's playing games with their paychecks." He was already pulling out his phone, fingers trembling as he hit speed dial. "Dad, you need to see this. She's got files about the payroll systems, everything." The silence on the other end stretched so long I could almost feel Preston calculating, measuring options like ingredients for one of his famous family recipes. Finally, his voice came through, cool and clipped. "I'll have Bennett prepare the necessary responses. Keep her there." Keep her there, like I was some kind of fugitive in my own home. Daniel ended the call and just stood there, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. Not really. "You need to choose, Carmen," he said softly. "Right now, us or them." "I already chose," I told him. "The moment your father decided to make me a punchline instead of a person. The moment he built his empire on stolen hours and broken promises. My suitcase sat in our closet upstairs, half-packed for days now just in case. But something in me refused to run. This was my home too, bought with years of swallowed pride and careful planning. My phone buzzed. Gloria, always sensing trouble somehow. "Safe bed here if needed," her text read. "Don't let them corner you." I typed back, "Staying put. My house too." That night, I locked our bedroom door for the first time in 15 years of marriage. Daniel didn't even try to come up. I heard him settle into the guest room down the hall, the house filled with that particular kind of silence that happens when a marriage cracks right down the middle. His cologne still hung in the air, mixing with something darker, the smell of resentment maybe, or just the death of whatever illusions we'd both been living under. I checked my calendar before turning out the light. 4 days until the Department of Labor audit. 4 days that suddenly felt both too long and too short. My phone lit up with a text from Daniel. "Dad says you're done." I stared at those words until they blurred, then at the calendar with its neat little X's marking off the countdown. The future looked about as clear as mud, but that calendar I could read just fine. 4 more days. Whether I was done or not wasn't up to Preston anymore. I thought about all those workers I'd trained over the years, how they'd confided in me about missing wages and manipulated time cards, how they'd trusted me with their stories, believing I could do something about it just because I had married into the family that was hurting them. Maybe Daniel was right. Maybe I was done, just not in the way Preston meant. The next morning hit me like a hangover, though I hadn't touched a drop. You know that taste you get in your mouth when you've been up all night grinding your teeth? That metallic tang of fear and fury all mixed together? Yeah, that's what breakfast tasted like. I sat at our kitchen island, the one I'd picked out when we renovated last spring, back when I still thought I could make this house a home. The marble was cold under my elbows as I stared at my reflection in the French press. Funny how you can look exactly the same on the outside when everything inside has shifted. My phone buzzed. Gloria's voice filled my voicemail. "Carmen, honey, I know you're tired. Lord knows I've been where you are. But remember Miguel from the downtown location? 3 kids, working doubles, still couldn't make rent on time because of those creative timesheets? He wasn't the only one. You know that better than anyone. I did know. Every face, every story, every quiet confession shared over prep work or during cleanup. You ever notice how people tell you their truths when their hands are busy? Like somehow the motion makes it safer to speak? The bathroom mirror caught my eye as I passed. Same face that had commanded that kitchen during Preston's gala. Same woman who'd turned potential disaster into triumph. And what had it gotten me? A punchline on morning TV, and a husband who chose his father's lies over his wife's truth. My coffee went cold on the counter, while Preston's face flickered across the morning shows. The producers had him doing a media victory lap, all pressed suits and practiced humility. Family values, he kept saying, like it was some kind of shield. The news crawler teased his primetime interview tonight. Restaurant empire heir speaks on honor in business. Honor. I almost laughed. You want to know what honor looks like? It's a single mother counting quarters for gas because her manager adjusted her time card again. It's a college kid working through bronchitis because he can't afford to lose the hours they keep promising to pay him for. My laptop sat open to a draft statement I'd prepared days ago, just in case. Just 3 paragraphs that could blow Preston's carefully constructed image to pieces. My thumb hovered over the attachment, trembling slightly. Not yet. The Department of Labor needed 1 more day to get their ducks in a row, 1 more day of silence to protect the case we'd built. I touched my wedding ring, still there, though it felt different now, heavier maybe, or just more honest about what it really meant. Daniel's door stayed closed upstairs, and I let it. Some silences say everything that needs saying. The kitchen timer I'd been using to count down ticked over, 24 hours until the audit. Hold, I whispered to myself, to the evidence secured in triple backups, to the workers waiting for justice. Just hold. My phone lit up again, a local station producer this time. The same one who'd filmed me during the gala, actually. Her text was simple. Will you go on record tomorrow? Did you ever have one of those moments where the question you're asked isn't really the question at all? Where what they're really asking is, are you ready to light the match? Are you ready to burn it all down? I looked at that text for a long time. Through the window, I could see Preston's car already heading toward the studio, probably rehearsing his lines about legacy and tradition. About family. The producer's cursor blinked, waiting for my answer. Tomorrow. Everything would change tomorrow. I set my phone down without replying. Some questions don't need an immediate answer when silence is working in your favor. Instead, I walked to the window and watched Preston's car disappear around the corner, leaving nothing but exhaust in the morning air. The audit clock kept ticking, 23 hours and counting. You know that calm that settles right before everything changes? Like the air going still before a storm? That's what that morning felt like. I sat in my car outside the station, watching the sunrise paint the Atlanta skyline in shades of gold and promise. The same colors that had decorated Preston's restaurant signs for 40 years. My phone buzzed. Gloria, right on schedule. Everything's triple-checked, honey. Those signature patterns tell the whole story. You ready? As I'll ever be. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. You ever notice how courage sometimes shows up that way? Like it's been there all along, just waiting for you to trust it? Through the stations, glass doors, I could see Preston holding court in the green room. All polished cufflinks and practiced charm, surrounded by producers who laughed at jokes that probably weren't funny. Daniel wasn't there, probably for the best. Some bridges you have to cross alone. The makeup artist kept things simple, just like I'd asked. No power suit, no statement jewelry, just my navy work blouse, small pearl earrings my grandmother left me, and enough powder to cut the studio glare. When you're speaking truth, you don't need much decoration. 5 minutes to air, someone called out. I could hear Preston's segment starting through the monitors. His voice filled the space with practiced warmth. 4 decades of honest Southern legacy, building community one table at a time. My hand stayed steady as I checked my phone one last time. Gloria had sent over the final verification. Every document, tagged, every pattern highlighted. Those signatures at the bottom of each payroll adjustment. Preston probably never thought anyone would look closely enough to notice how the P changed when he was rushing through stacks of time card corrections. The producer, Sarah was her name, touched my arm. "We're offering a back-to-back segment. You sure you want to do this live?" I nodded. Some stories need to be told in real time, need to be seen, in the moment they break. You can't schedule truth like you schedule dinner service. From the monitor, I heard applause as Preston's segment wrapped. He was beaming, basking in it, just like at the gala, just like always. Sarah gestured toward the studio door. "Ready?" The chair made a soft scraping sound as I pulled it back from the desk. The anchor, Thomas Wells, I'd seen him at charity events, gave me a professional nod. The red light blinked on. "Carmen Langford," I said clearly, before he could introduce me. "Some names you need to own completely." Thomas recovered smoothly. "Yes, welcome. We're continuing our discussion about Southern heritage restaurants." "We are," I agreed, then nodded to the tech booth. Right on cue, the first document appeared on the screen behind us. This is a typical weekly timesheet from the downtown location. Notice the manual adjustments in the margins? More documents flowed across the screen. These patterns show up across multiple locations. Mandatory pre-shift work marked as voluntary. Post-close duties pushed off the clock. Tipped credit calculations that don't match actual service hours. Thomas leaned forward. "These are serious allegations." "They're documented facts," I corrected gently. "Every adjustment authorized with the same initials, P.W. Preston Whitmore." The studio went quiet. That kind of quiet that feels like everyone's holding their breath at once. Through the glass, I could see Preston frozen in the green room, staring at the monitor. Thomas cleared his throat. "The Department of Labor announced an investigation this morning. Are you the whistleblower?" I took a breath. Thought about every server who'd ever counted tips at midnight, wondering if they'd make rent. Every cook who worked through illness, because they couldn't afford to lose the hours. Every face, every story, every truth shared over prep work or during cleanup. I looked directly into the camera. Yes, I am. The studio monitors kept rolling even after we cut to commercial. You know that moment when you realize you've just changed everything? When your heart's pounding but your hands are steady? That's where I was. The tech team brought up the documents again, this time, frame by frame. Each signature filled the screen like damning fingerprints, Preston's distinctive PW next to columns of adjusted hours. Have you ever watched someone's carefully built fiction start crumbling in real time? That's what those initials did. "These variance roll-ups," I explained, pointing to Gloria's color-coded spreadsheets, "show exactly how much was shaved off each paycheck. See the pattern? Every Friday night closing shift. Every holiday weekend, minutes here, quarter hours there, it adds up." Thomas Wells nodded slowly, professional mask slipping just a bit. "And the Department of Labor confirms their audit begins tomorrow morning?" 8 a.m. sharp, I said. Multiple locations, synchronized visits. Through the glass, I could see Preston's lawyer frantically typing on his phone. The PR machinery was already grinding into action. Right on cue, my own phone buzzed. Their first statement hit the wires. Southern Heritage Restaurants categorically denies these baseless accusations from a disgruntled family member. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't care about fancy press releases. Across town, other stations were already picking up the feed. Split screens showed my calm explanations next to that gala footage from months ago. "She's just a waitress, y'all." Preston's mockery played on repeat, but this time, nobody was laughing. My phone buzzed again. "Daniel, come home and fix this. Now." I stared at that message for a long moment, remembering all those silent dinners, all those times he'd looked away. My thumbs hovered over the keys, but really, What was left to say? I tucked the phone away without responding. Social media exploded like a grease fire in a badly managed kitchen. Restaurant workers started sharing their own stories, tagging locations, naming managers. The posts read like a map of everything Gloria and I had documented. You ever watch a truth you've carried alone suddenly become everybody's conversation? Ms. Langford, a doll investigator's card appeared in front of me. We'll need the complete documentation trail. Chain of custody is critical. I nodded, thinking of the guest room back home where I'd prepared for this moment. Boxes labeled by year, folders, tagged by location, everything indexed and backed up. Some people collect china or silver. I'd collected proof. The drive home felt surreal, like those quiet moments after last call when you're counting out the register and everything seems a little too sharp, a little too clear. The streets were dark except for porch lights and the occasional passing car. In my head, I could still hear Preston's voice from that morning's interview. Honest. Southern legacy. Amazing how many lies can hide in 3 simple words. It was nearly midnight when the knock came. Not Daniel. He still hadn't come home. Not Preston's lawyers either. This knock was different, gentle but certain. Gloria stood there with a thick manila envelope and that calm smile that had gotten me through the past few months. Thought you might need these, she said, holding up notarized summary tables. Every variance, every signature, every dollar owed, all organized by quarter. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in her familiar mix of peppermint and paper dust. Let's finish this, she said softly. We spread the new documents across the dining room table, that massive mahogany piece Preston had gifted us for Christmas years ago. Fitting, somehow, that it would host the proof of his undoing. Gloria's precise handwriting mapped out years of systematic wage, theft, each entry another crack in that honest Southern legacy. The clock ticked toward morning as we double-checked every reference, every calculation. Tomorrow would bring investigators and interviews, more cameras and questions. But right now, it was just us, the truth, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes justice comes served with a side of perfect timing. 8 a.m. hit different that morning. You know that calm before a storm? This wasn't it. This was the storm itself, rolling in with badges and clipboards. I stood across the street from Preston's flagship location, watching doll investigators file through those fancy double doors. They moved with that quiet efficiency that comes from doing this hundreds of times before. No drama, no speeches, just procedure and purpose. Time and attendance records, please, one inspector said to the wide-eyed host. Poor kid, couldn't have been more than 19. And we'll need access to your point-of-sale systems. Through the window, I could see the district manager gesturing frantically while Preston's legal team tried to intervene. The lead investigator, a woman with steel gray hair and seen-it-all eyes, simply held up her credentials and kept walking. Ma'am, we need time to prepare these materials properly, one of Preston's lawyers attempted. Sir, this is a properly noticed wage and hour investigation under Section 11A of the Fair Labor Standards Act, she replied without breaking stride. Your preparation time was yesterday. Ever watch someone try to hold back the tide with a cocktail napkin? That's what Preston's damage control looked like. Local news vans started pulling up, their satellite dishes reaching toward the morning sky like metal flowers. By 10 a.m., they were cutting live to each location, splitting screens between investigation footage and Preston's smug interview from the night before. 4 decades of honest Southern legacy, his recorded voice boomed while cameras caught investigators boxing up hard drives. My phone stayed quiet from Daniel's end. Funny how silence can say more than words sometimes. I'd packed enough at Gloria's to last a week, though part of me knew I wouldn't be going back to that house. Some doors, once closed, stay that way. Around 2 p.m., my notifications exploded. The first preliminary findings had leaked. The banner headline hit like a thunderclap. Alleged wage theft at Heritage Chain. Below it, bullet points spelled out what Gloria and I had known for months. Systematic time-shaving, mandatory off-clock prep work, tipped credit violations that stretched back years. "Ms. Langford," a reporter called out, spotting me grabbing coffee, across from the main investigation site. "Any comment on the developing situation?" I shook my head and kept walking. The time for talking was done. Now it was time to let the evidence speak for itself. Late afternoon brought another wave of updates. Preston's calendar started emptying faster than a steam table at closing time. Speaking engagement postponed. Panel appearance canceled. Charity board meeting rescheduled. The dominoes fell, one by one. But you want to know the real moment? It came at 5:47 p.m. I remember the time exactly because I was standing at that same coffee shop when Preston emerged from Heritage headquarters. Gone was the smooth-talking man from yesterday's TV spot. Gone was the perfectly pressed suit and practiced smile. He pushed through the exit doors like a man walking underwater, barely registering the camera flashes or shouted questions. For just a second, our eyes met across the street. I lifted my coffee cup in the smallest salute, thought about all those times he'd called me just anything. Then he was gone, swallowed up by his waiting car, leaving only silence and camera crews in his wake. Gloria's text summed it up perfectly. Karma comes with documentation. The sun set on a changed Atlanta that night. Doll vans still dotted the parking lots of Heritage locations across the city. Inside, investigators continued their methodical work, building the case hour by hour, signature by signature. The evening news led with aerial shots of the whole operation, looking like some kind of corporate crime scene. 24 hours can change everything. You know what I mean? 1 minute you're watching a man swagger into a TV studio like he owns the world, and the next you're watching that same world crumble around him piece by piece. I sat in the same chair I'd used yesterday, but this time the energy was different. No need for reveals or dramatic moments, just the steady drum of facts marching across the ticker below me. The Department of Labor has announced formal enforcement actions against Heritage Restaurant Group, the anchor began, her tone measured but her eyes bright. Initial findings indicate systematic wage violations affecting over 3,000 current and former employees. They cut to footage of the lead investigator I'd watched yesterday, now standing behind a podium. The preliminary assessment of back wages owed exceeds $4 million before statutory penalties. She paused, letting that sink in. This represents one of the largest wage recovery actions in the region's history. I could almost hear Preston's expensive lawyers scrambling. But you can't lawyer your way out of signatures on payroll reports, can you? Every variance, every adjustment, every policy memo, they all led straight back to his office. The commercial break hit, and my phone lit up with a message from Gloria. Turn to Channel 4. I did, just in time to catch the domino effect in full swing. The Chamber of Commerce was reviewing Preston's leadership position. 3 national brands had pulled their ads from Heritage locations. The United Way had quietly removed his name from their donor wall. In a further development, the reporter continued, Preston Whitmore has stepped down from the boards of 6 local charitable organizations, citing personal reasons. Personal reasons. That's what they always say, isn't it? Like somehow it softens the fall. My phone buzzed again. Daniel this time. After 24 hours of silence, he'd found his words. This didn't have to happen. You chose this. Don't come home. I typed 3 words back. Already moved out. No drama, no accusations. Some endings don't need explanation. They just need acceptance. The next morning felt like stepping into a new world. The late September air had that crisp edge that makes everything feel possible. I stood outside my new place, not a bistro yet, but getting there. The contractors had finished ahead of schedule, probably because I'd learned a thing or two about managing timelines over the years. Welcome to orientation, I called out to the small group gathering by the door. Familiar faces, every one of them. The line cook Preston had written up for asking about overtime. The server who documented split shifts that dodged benefits requirements. The hostess who'd kept her own records of clock-in adjustments. Before we start, I said, unlocking the door, I want you to know something. Every person here will be paid properly, trained fully, and treated with respect. That's not just policy, that's my promise. The morning light streamed through the front windows, catching the brass nameplate in my hand. Simple, elegant, truth in 3 words. Carmen's table. The bracket was already mounted, waiting. I lined it up carefully, feeling the weight of the moment. The click as it slid home felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. A few cameras flashed. Seems word had gotten out about the opening. One reporter called out, "Ms. Langford, what would you say to Preston Whitmore now?" I turned from the window, touching the cool glass one last time, and smiled. Never let the man who mocks your apron own your story.